Welcome to another episode of the Voices of the Learning Network podcast. This is your guest host today, Bill Banham, volunteer board member with the Learning Network. And today I'm going to sit down with Simon Strong, co-founder of Download Learning, to explore an evidence-backed rethink of how we design learning that can stick. Simon's work sits at the intersection of neuroscience, behavior, and instructional design with a clear goal: help people form long-term memories faster and apply what they learn more effectively in the real world. From his early days in advertising, working with global brands and behavioral experts, to building a methodology now used in high-risk sectors like healthcare, law enforcement, and energy, Simon likes to challenge traditional assumptions about time, attention, and learning design. For the Learning Network community, leaders, designers, and facilitators focused on impact over activity, this conversation gets into what it takes to design learning that works under pressure, scales effectively, and respects how the brain actually learns. Simon, how are you doing? Thanks very much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, all is good. The sun is shining, the birds are tweeting, the blossoms are blossoming, so life is good.
Yes, listeners, before we hit record today, Simon and I were just marveling at the spring. It's as we record this, it's the very end of March, and all those lovely cherry blossoms are just about to pop out, and the daffs have been here for a few weeks, and it's all terribly lovely. What a nice time of year. Simon, beyond my reintroduction just a moment ago, why don't you take 60 seconds and tell us anything I missed? Tell us a bit more about yourself and your background.
Well, I came out, as you said, I was in advertising at places like Saatchi & Bates, working on global advertising campaigns. And when I left, I hooked up with an ex-colleague of mine. In advertising, you argue for days on end with clients about how to change an audience. And once they're about to fire you, you try and repair the relationship by taking them on a jolly. And we'd bumped into each other on the fire escape, having a cigarette of a theatre in London, both trying to repair a relationship with a client. And we thought maybe we should have started there all along, the theatre being a 4,000-year-long focus group into what audiences want. And every night the actors are able to change the audience emotionally on cue. So I started using improvisational theatre combined with work we'd done with Desmond Morris into primate psychology to look at brands and branding, and that led into innovation projects and organisational change, and really laid the foundation for what we do now, sort of behaviour change practice. Yeah.
From your work in high-stakes environments like healthcare and law enforcement, Simon, what have you learned about how people really learn under pressure?
Well, we want to ensure people make the right decisions and do the right thing when it really matters. And stress does funny things to you. You know, we'll all know the experience of standing up to speak in public and your brain goes blank and your fine motor skills become blunted and you knock over the glass of water and your vision becomes tunneled. And when we're thinking about high stakes situations, we often treat the training as if it's classroom stuff. And there's a big difference between cold and hot training. Hot training is when the adrenaline dumps and all of that weird stuff happens to your brain and your motor skills. Cold training is what we do in a classroom. And you need both. But in the hot moment, you need clarity and simplicity. And one of the things we tend to do in classrooms is overload it. And so one of the key elements of ensuring people can apply what they've learned is actually making it doing less, is having absolute clarity and simplicity to the communication of what you want them to do and how you want them to assess a situation and make a decision.
Okay, so clarity under pressure. You advocate for something you call time sequenced learning, Simon. What is it, and what problem were you trying to solve when you developed it?
Well, it came from some work by a neuroscientist in the States, a guy called Douglas Fields and his team, and that was read by an educationist called Paul Kelly here in the UK, an anglicised Californian, who was the headmaster of an experimental high school in the north of England. And Douglas was looking at what it is, how the brain creates new neural connections, what triggers that process, the chemical process. And Paul read the paper that he'd done, of the work that he'd done, and applied that understanding to a classroom setting. And he took a group of students who were not studying GCSE biology, and he gave them an hour-long lesson at the beginning of the year. And at the end of the academic year, using that method, at the end of the academic year, he grabbed them without warning and got them to sit the exam paper alongside their peers who'd been studying full-time. And that topic they'd studied for half a term. And his students who'd had 1 hour a year earlier got the same results as students who'd had half a term of learning plus homework and revision. And that was written up in things like The Guardian and the Times Educational Supplement. And I read about that, and it seemed to me that people are really good at doing creative acts. We like to do variety of things. We like to change things. But technology is really good at doing repetitive tasks. So we could take that methodology and digitize it and scale it up to deliver that sort of training at scale.
Okay, so you make some claims about compressing learning time while improving retention and application. Tell us more about what's the evidence base behind this, and what convinced you that it was working?
Well, the first two pieces of research were the original neuroscience, and then the work of Paul, who passed away earlier this year, unfortunately. But we approached Paul and said, can we digitize this? And at the time, I was talking a lot with Dr. Andy Agcroft at the University of Surrey, the Deputy Dean of the Business School there. And he was interested in, are there better ways of teaching students, and do different styles of teaching and learning suit different students? And he was looking for a wild card to throw into what he called a learning tournament. And I told him about our thought, and he said, can we throw this in? So we created a prototype. And what he found was that compared to all the other forms of learning that he researched, students who learnt with our method, with the download method, learnt more. But not only did they learn more, they were better able to apply it in real world contexts. And then in addition to that, they were able to extend that learning into new domains that weren't explicitly covered. So that was the sort of the kickstart to the work. More recently, we've just done a big project with the Institute of Physics on GCSE curriculum. And we had the chair of human development and psychology at UCL conduct peer-reviewed research across 6 non-selective state schools, where we took one of the topics that for GCSE physics and created an hour-long package. And he found that we were able to deliver the same learning in an hour as half a term of school learning. But more interestingly than that, when we gave the students our package and then half a term of traditional classroom learning, their attainment doubled. So again, that's another piece of peer reviewed. And we've worked with a lot of organizations and found these results repeated every time.
For our learning network community then, Simon, many of whom are designing programs inside organizations, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see in traditional instructional design?
Well, I think cognitive load is the big thing. So putting too much in, and there's very much less is more. What's the least you can tell them to achieve the outcome that you're trying to get to? I think there's a tendency to equate pace and quantity with the importance of the topic. So if it's an important topic, we have to go slowly and we have to do lots of it. Whereas the real truth is, the more important it is, the quicker you go and the less you should say. And I think the other problem we have is this differentiation between hot and cold training, which is because we are used to classroom training, to cold training, and we test in an academic way, we put content in which is suitable to that environment. But what we're really trying to do is get hot outcomes. We're trying to get people to do things and make decisions. And if we design with that in mind, we have a totally different classroom experience or a different instructional design experience. So we're designing in order to get people to do things or to make decisions. So rather than testing people, for example, on what the law says, we want to test them on whether they can comply with the legal requirements. So what does that look like? What's the doing of?
So the examples we've used so far, physics, law, it seems like there are lots of rights and wrongs with those sorts of disciplines. But what about when you're trying to teach people critical thinking, communication skills? Does that can those sorts of skills fit into the learning methodologies that you've spoken about so far?
Absolutely. So one of the projects we worked on was with Surrey and Sussex Police on stop and search protocols. So the College of Policing designed a 2-day course for every frontline officer. Surrey and Sussex have got 5,000 officers. That's 10,000 days of training, backfill, logistics. And we created a package which enabled them to deliver it in a lunchtime effectively. But crucially, that's about how do you make good decisions about what you're going to do. So assessing a scenario, understanding what the variables are so you can identify that, and then making a decision based on that. So making decisions, and additionally, in the original research we did with Andy Agcroft was specifically around this. So having come from an advertising background, we suggested that the topic might be, and related to business, would be advertising standards, where you've got that duality. There's a legal requirement, a right and a wrong, but also a creative imperative to push the envelope, shall we say, to try and push the boundaries of what is right and wrong. And again, what he found was those students who had learned with Download were better able to apply that, were able to stay within the boundaries of the ASA guidelines, but push them creatively. So I think it's about, again, it goes back to, you're not teaching people the rules, but understanding how to stay within them.
Okay, very good, very good. Thank you. Okay, so how does time sequence learning fit within a broader learning ecosystem then, or blend? Is it a replacement for traditional approaches? Is that what you're saying today, or something that enhances them?
It's very much part of a process. One of the things we've been trying to understand is what learning is. So when we talk to people, specialists or academics, and say, how do people learn? They often tell us how teachers teach rather than how learners learn. So we've been developing what we call the CAR model, which stands for CAR. C is cognition, conceptualization, which is that cold classroom learning, which is the framework within which you need to learn. The A is application, action, the doing of, and the R is review and reflect. And so we specialize in that C to accelerate and embed learning in order to enable people to do the A of application. And the R, the review and reflect, we're starting to do more work around in terms of toolbox talks and embedding coaching and debriefing within the processes and procedures that an organization has. So building that into the design of what we want people to do. So we're building learning cultures. But it's all about understanding how individuals, teams, and organizations learn collaboratively and practice their work.
Excellent. Simon, you're not going to believe this, but we are almost out of time already. What, Bill? Well, I'm just getting into this. I'm having so much fun. We'll have to get you back on, Simon. But for today, before we do wrap up, how can folks connect with you? Is that LinkedIn? Is that email? Are you super cool and all over TikTok and places? Tell us more.
I'm definitely not super cool, so I'm not TikTok. I'm very much LinkedIn is a very good way of getting hold of me. You can email me, simon@downloadlearning.ltd.uk, but LinkedIn is probably the easiest. So Simon Strong, and just connect and say hi.
And by the way, what an amazing name, Simon Strong. You should have been a newscaster, Simon.
I've often asked if it's my stage name or not.
That just leads me to say, for today, Simon, thank you very much for joining me.
Well, thank you very much, Bill.